It's a dragon!
Thanks, Captain Obvious.
Ninjago Dragons Rising Season 2 is the sequel to the sequel to the finale to what was originally considered to be a sequel to the original show Ninjago Masters of Spinjitzu, only to then be integrated into the original show. When it was first released roughly 1 year ago, people talked about it as if it was the best thing since sliced bread, with video essays Bendo Bricks even calling it better than the Oni trilogy. However, after Dragons Rising Season 3 ended up being pretty disappointing, this hype seems to have died down. In my opinion though, we should have seen this coming because, as I will demonstrate in this video, Season 2 already had a lot of red flags in the writing, which is why even back then, my first reaction to seeing the season was...
I've got a bad feeling about this.
Let me clarify, I don't hate Dragons Rising Season 2. In fact, I love it on a subjective level. Objectively speaking, however, it is an overall bad season. There are flaws, things that do not make sense. A couple of bad episodes. In this video, I, PJ, will go through some of those things and explain why I think that we, the fandom, need to watch out a little more. I have a feeling that the current quality of DR is not going to last for as long as many think. But first, here are some disclaimers. Do not attack, harass or bully anyone I mention in this video, even if I criticize or joke about them. They are all humans and deserve to be treated respectfully. Second, there are going to be spoilers for all seasons of Dragons Rising and at least some for Ninjago. Watch with caution. Third, feel free to disagree. Oh, that rhymed. But seriously, my opinion is not fact. There are some things I say with objective arguments, but even those can be argued against. Now, without further ado, let's start with... Just to remind you, I still love this season and a lot of things about it. For example, the new locations. I generally feel like the biggest strength of the current main writers, Kevin Burke and Doc Wyatt, is world building and creating new interesting objects and locations. They are not as good at it as some others, but it is still most impressive. The training grounds of Egalt and Rontu are both simplistic and mystical, while also delivering on our new expansion to Spinjitzu, the Rising Dragon technique. The City of Temples perfectly represents the traditions and mythology that we keep hearing about and offer pretty unique fight sequences. However, my favorite new location is an old one. The Wildness, most prominently the Shadow Dojo. Generally, the villainous aesthetic of the season is amazing. It's got the masks, it's got the gong, it's got the red spinning, it's got the perfect music. Really, the presence and danger of the Wolf Clan is felt throughout each episode. Especially once they take over Cloud Kingdom in this breathtaking action scene, which is almost as breathtaking as all the other different action scenes of the season. Look at this, and this. And this, it is so good. Finally, the characters of the season. I have one huge problem with them that we will get to later, but let me talk about the scene stealers first. Raz. Raz gets the win of the week in my opinion. He is the coolest, most interesting, most threatening and scary character of Dragons Rising so far. Now that he actually does something, unlike in Season 1 Part 2, he blows most classic Ninjago villains out of the water. Keyword most. I still think the original Mount Rushmore of Ninjago villains is better, mostly because I don't like how the final 3 episodes kinda sideline Raz. However, it is undeniable how well written he is. He also manages to be entertaining and badass at the same time, which is my personal main criteria for judging a villain. Right next to whether they have a good dynamic with the hero, which he does. His manipulative yet still somewhat caring relationship with Arin works incredibly, which brings us to our main protagonist. Arin started out as a likable but slightly underdeveloped character in Season 1, but here he is done wonderfully. His breakdown after the events of Season 1 is very believable and is naturally worsened both by Arin's own mentality and his master's failings. And with Part 2, he is now the first ninja to turn on the team willingly. What is amazing about this, however, is that Arin has not become a bad guy. He still does not completely trust Raz and only sees him as a means to find his parents, leaving him in a grey area that is much more interesting than just him being suddenly all chaotic evil. Wait a minute. That means that Arin and Ras are both so well written that they saved not just one, but 2 seasons in a row. As far as side characters go, Season 2 is not as memorable as Season 1, but I still like the majority of side characters we got, especially Roby, who had the potential to be annoying but works because most of his jokes are well timed and his relationship with Wildfire is actually really sweet. Also, he introduces us to the Tournament of the Sources. I am a sucker for tournament arcs, and while I personally still prefer the Tournament of Elements, this tournament is also pretty fun. There are other positives such as individual scenes or overall themes, but those are topics for other videos, so let us now get into why I think the season is overrated, the reason you are all here. Remember how I started the section on positives with saying that Kevin Burke and Doc Wyatt's biggest strength is the creation of new objects and locations in the world building? Well, their biggest weakness is being consistent with the old one. We already saw some of that in Season 1, like here. Beatrix's reason for turning evil is that she did not have powers, while her twin sister Zeatrix did. The explanation is that Zeatrix was born before Beatrix, which is why she had the power. What? Since when is the elemental power being transferred during birth? Like, remember how Misako said that she knew Lloyd was going to be the Green Ninja long before anyone else knew, implying she already knew it when she was pregnant with him? Also, if elemental powers were transferred during birth and only affected the firstborn, how is it that both time twins share the element of time? Acronix even says that Crux was born 3 minutes before him. I guess main producer Tommy Andreasen did say in one tweet that time is an exception, but something like that should be explained in the show itself and not on Twitter. And by what explanation we get in the show, this doesn't make any sense. And don't you dare call it a nitpick, since this is the reason that Beatrix becomes Empress in the first place. But whatever. You could say that she only assumed that the birth of Zeatrix is the reason for their asymmetry. However, there are many more examples of lore inconsistencies, especially in Season 2. Egalt and Rontu make a huge deal out of the original ninja masters being dragons, even though in Secrets of a Forbidden Spinjitzu, Wu told us a completely different story as to where ninja came from.
The monks became faster, stronger, more cunning. They evolved into ninja.
But not only the origin of the ninja is retconned, but also some things about elemental powers.
Can't control metal!
It is true that the element of earth cannot control metal, but Cole should still be able to affect it with his super strength, as we can see in this scene right here. Another bigger problem is that they retconned Lloyd's power. Now he is no longer the elemental master of power or energy, but
Elemental master of life!
because the Source Dragon we see in Season 1 is the Source Dragon of energy, but Doc and Kevin really wanted Lloyd's power to be one of the Source Dragon of life instead. However, the most egregious inconsistency regarding elemental powers is the change of masters. In case you did not know, it was leaked before the season premiere that Cinder would be the elemental master of smoke, leading to everyone asking the question, what happened to Ash, the previous elemental master of smoke? Some theorized that Ash is dead and his powers chose a new body. Others said they might be related and have the same power that way. I personally had no concrete theory, but was very excited. What was Cinder going to be like as a character? And what interesting backstory would they give him to explain his powers? The answer was...
Nothing!
They throw in one-liner where Kai mentions he trashed the last Master of Smoke, but other than that, no one seems to ask the question of what happened to Ash. We just have to accept there's no explanation, aside from Doc Wyatt telling us in a random Blue Sky post, and not in the show itself, that they are related, which tells us nothing. In what way are they related, and what happened to Ash? Even tvtropes.org calls this nonsense an ass pull on its YMMV page for Dragons Rising. However, it gets even worse than that. There's not just one new elemental master with an old element and no explanation as to how they got it. No. There are 3. First there is Obscuria, who is the new elemental master of Shadow, according to Blacked. This might actually be the worst of these, since Shade was an actual character in Tournament of Elements. Like, he went through an arc and had significance to the story. So if he died between seasons, this is pretty unceremonious. And there wasn't even a reason to do this. Obscuria does not appear aside from one joke and a small background appearance in United We Fall. She never fights on screen and does not even have any lines, so why did they introduce her? To be fair though, Doc White later clarified on a Blue Sky post that Obscuria is Shade's daughter. Then again, this makes no sense timeline-wise. Hunted was around 8 years before Dragons Rising Season 2, and there is no way that Obscuria is only 8. So now this plot hole is even worse. Amazing! Then there is a Melopian who took over as a Master of Sound. His predecessor Jacob was a character with plot significance too. I am pretty sure there are people out there who really like him. Now they were robbed of him ever coming back. Fantastic. The biggest inconsistency with the original show, however, is something that I'll just mention quickly and then move on, since this inconsistency is so bad it will absolutely get its own video. The inconsistency I mean is an entire character relationship. A relationship that was introduced in Season 1 but gets more screen time in this one. It is Geode. Cole and Geo are heavily implied to be gay, as you all probably know. There are multiple scenes where they hold hands and look at each other romantically. In this season, there is even a scene where Geo reminisces of the time he had with Cole. It is never outright confirmed that they are a couple, and Glenn Larkin, the writer who created Geo, even said that he is not allowed to say that it is canon. However, after like 37,000 scenes of them implying it, it might as well just be canon. Which is objectively bad writing, because Cole was never gay in the original show at all. But PJ, that is not true! Who are you, and how did you get into my screenshot of a monastery? I am the Mud Guy, and I come from Uranus. What? The second to last planet in the solar system, Uranus. Oh, yeah, that one. So what do you want? Cole was gay in the original show. Don't you remember that scene in Season 1 where he comes out to his father? Are you serious? Cole was talking about him not being interested in his father's career. Sure, some of the stuff said in the scene makes it sound gay without any context, especially him saying there's something I've been wanting to tell you, but in context this has nothing to do with homosexuality. Well, yeah, that is true, but does it matter? Ninjago needs representation. Little retcon is a small sacrifice for that. If they wanted representation, they could have just created 2 new characters who are gay. There was no reason for changing a character's sexuality out of nowhere. However, I will stop with this topic now, since this is just the tip of the iceberg. There is a lot more stuff that is wrong with Cole and Geo's implied relationship. Objectively bad writing, objectively bad characterization, and so much more that would just be too much for such a small section. Which is why I will make a separate video dissecting exactly why this is nonsense. Unless you have anything more you want to say. Not now! I will defend Geode more once you get to your video about it. Until then, I will just wait. Now move on. That was weird. Anyway, those were a lot of inconsistencies between Dragons Rising and the original series, which is already pretty bad. What's worse, however, is the number of inconsistencies between Dragons Rising Season 1 and 2, or even within Season 2. To list off some examples. Early on in the season, a rivalry between Jordana and Cinder is established. This is brought up multiple times in Part 1, but never actually goes anywhere. Cole returns from his mission set up in Season 1. He must have finished it after the events of these stupid elemental mech shorts, yet he never talks about his mission aside from this.
Was your mission successful? I'll fill you in later.
He doesn't fill us in until a season and a half later with a lame and nonsensical explanation. But even if it were good, it wouldn't change the fact that he went on a mission, then randomly spawned in the monastery without any of the other ninja questioning it, then his mission happened off-screen and the cliffhanger was not resolved properly. Instead, people who have not watched the shorts will ask where Cole got his new mech from, and why no one is surprised to see him, and what this is all about. At one point, Rontu tells Lloyd that his visions only show him possible futures, things that might happen but don't necessarily will. Yet, throughout Part 2, his visions are treated as if they will 100% come true. Bonzel is apparently not a skeleton, but a living spell that took on the form of a skeleton. Was there any foreshadowing to that during her short appearance in Season 1? Nope. Zane Tans has an elemental power. Was there any foreshadowing to that during his short appearance in Season 1? Nope. Also, Zane is framed for being behind the attacks on Xur and the Ninja. The latter party does not believe this because, to quote Arin,
I know Xantans. He doesn't have a cruel bone in his body.
You mean the guy who tried to brutally murder Repton and was completely okay with letting Lloyd walk on what he thought was a 100% deadly path? Yeah, he is a very sweet and lovable guy who would never do anything cruel to anyone. The reason everyone believes Zane to be behind it? Wow, I cannot believe I have so much to say about Zane of all people. Well, the reason everyone believed him to be behind the attacks is because the weapon of the attacker was a plant only Zane had access to. However, Zane was innocent. So how did Raz and or Black get the poisonous thorn thing when only a member of the Mother Garden could do so? Never explained. In the same episode, we get to know Frag, Arin's childhood friend. A childhood friend that he never mentioned to Sora or Ryu until one episode earlier. Before that, he only ever mentioned his parents when talking about people he lost in the merge. Don't get me wrong, losing your parents is a lot more tragic than losing a friend, since blood is thicker than water. But he literally never mentioned him at all, even though these people have been a team for over a year at this point. Okay, it's getting a little stinky in here, so let us get to the final and, depending on how the rest of the story unfolds, biggest inconsistency between Dragons Rising Season 1 and 2. In The Power Within, Ra's master is first mentioned. Raz is working for someone mysterious, and ever since he told that, a great number of theories have been made. Who could the master be? Is it a new character? An old one? Perhaps an Oni? Someone from Raz's realm? We still do not know at this point, however, Season 2 has now given us a number of clues. Raz's master is shown to have a supernatural power even the ninja have not yet seen. He can pull Raz into some sort of pocket dimension and talk to him there. We also know that, according to Raz, the philosophy of his master is that strength is the most important thing in the world. And there we have it. This last point is the strongest bit of evidence to the master's identity. So strong, in fact, that I think I already know who it is. But before I tell you about it, how about you take a guess in the comments below? 3, 2, 1, it is a Source Dragon. That is already pretty likely, given that when Raz was pulled into this pocket dimension thing, his eyes glowed and he started levitating, exactly as Lloyd did when he got pulled into the room with all the Source Dragons. But which Source Dragon is it? Remember what Egalt told the ninja?
Shatterspin is an obsession with strength. But only fools believe strength is all important. Many things can be more powerful than strength. Example? Motion.
So, if a ninja keep learning that motion is more powerful than strength, and even get help from the Source Dragon of Motion later, it would only make sense for the Source Dragon of Strength to be the teacher of Raz. Especially now that we know that Raz's hammer is an icon of the Source Dragon of Strength. So most likely it's gonna turn out that he is Raz's master. Which creates a pretty big plot hole. Because, if you remember, the whole reason the ninja engaged Raz in battle in the first place is because he helped Imperium hunt down dragons to get to the Shadow Dojo. Had the writers actually planned for Raz's master to be a Source Dragon, then none of this should have happened because Raz's planning session with his master would have looked like this.
So what's the plan, boss?
You are going to go to Imperium and use that realm to drain one of my siblings of their Source Dragon energy. That energy can then be used to...
Wait a minute. You are a Source Dragon. Can't you just give me some of your Source Dragon energy?
Oh, you're right. Here, have some. However, that one is still left open. Perhaps this is all just one huge red herring and Raz's master isn't actually a Source Dragon. We will have to see. Now, I have been talking about inconsistencies for pretty long, so let's move on to reason 2 for Season 2. The pacing in the season is horrible! Okay, maybe that's a little exaggerated. No, it's not. It's horrible! Granted, this is still the second season using the 20 episode format, so of course the writers are still figuring things out, but it kind of feels like a step back from Season 1's already pretty mixed pacing. Season 1 Part 1 started out at a great pace, but then the Imperium plotline dragged for just a little bit. Meanwhile, part 2 started out with a batch of pretty rushed episodes, where lots of stuff happened one after the other. It did not really get back to a normal pace until the administration episode. Still, Season 1's pacing was overall acceptable. It never got unbelievably boring, like in Crystallized, and I understood what was happening the whole time, unlike in an unbelievably rushed season like March of the Oni. Season 2 is a very different story, however. The opening episode, The Blood Moon, was overall a pretty slow start. Aside from Lloyd's visions and the stuff with our MVP Raz, it mostly just consisted of Sora and Arin talking about the Night Ghost case and getting into not very interesting investigations. Then the pacing picks up unbelievably in the second and third episode, especially with the sequence in the Phantasm Cave. Definitely my favorite scene of the season. Unfortunately, the ninja then get to Egalt and Rontu. Remember how I mentioned that their locations is a very interesting place world building wise? Yeah, I cannot say the same about the plotline attached to the place. Sorry. Aside from Arin's struggles and Wildfire's growth, the whole plotline is really boring. The entire first episode in this place is just Egalt and Rontu giving the ninja exposition about the Forbidden Five, that is sometimes interrupted by the Land of Lost Things plot. After that, however, it gets only slightly better. Most lessons just consist of the ninja doing spinjitzu and Egalt being a jerk. More on that later. Now, that already sounds pretty boring, but we have to spend a total of 4 episodes here. I genuinely felt more invested in the subplot with Zane, Cole and Bonsel. Of course, I seem to be very alone with that take, and if you love the stuff with Egalt and Rontu, that is 100% okay. I was just missing Raz, who, like I said, is the best part of the season for me. He appears not very frequently until we get to the wildness, when the season picks up the pace again to deliver a fantastic mid-season finale. Or whatever we are supposed to call the endings to part 1 of each season. But yeah, I've got no problem with the pacing of these episodes. Unlike the ones of part 2. No. Wait. When I first imagined this video, I wanted to compare the structure of Dragon's Rising Season 2 Part 2 to the Tournament of Elements. However, since one is a full-blown season and the other just half of it, I cannot really do that. So let's discuss this part only. Season 4 of the original Ninjago TV series starts out with an action scene that first introduces us to the jungle setting of the season. Then it transitions into a reintroduction to all the ninja that lasts up until the scene where they first hear of the tournament, which happens about halfway through episode 1. Then they get on the boat that brings them to the island of the tournament, where they arrive at the beginning of episode 2. There we get a short introduction to the rules and participants of the tournament, before it begins. Boom. We find out about the tournament, 1 episode later it starts. What about the Tournament of the Sources? We, the audience, first hear about the tournament when Raz mentions it to his master in episode 10. Kinda weird not to foreshadow the tournament before that, but whatever. The ninja do not hear of the tournament until the very end of episode 11. But now all the main characters know about it. Does that mean that the tournament starts in the next episode? Nope. We spent all of episode 12 just trying to get to it until the ninja are officially invited. Does that mean that the tournament starts now? Nope. First they've got to gather for the feast. In episode 13 they gather for the feast. Does the tournament start after the feast? No. First a couple of mysteries are set up that they discuss throughout the first half of episode 14. And then, only then, does the tournament actually start. You see the difference? In one season, we only need an episode to get to the tournament. In the other, we need over 3.5 episodes. As you can imagine, that leads to the actual tournament plot being incredibly rushed. There were multiple times where one plot point was set up, but I could not process it since another plot point was set up right after. Granted, all these plot points once again lead to a great ending, but it still does not change the fact that we needed to rush between different plotlines and points to get to it. It just makes the whole thing a little hard to watch. Just a little. Perhaps it would have been better to cut out some of the plotlines from within the tournament. That way, we do not have to spend so much time with the setup and can enjoy the arc without a problem. I mean, they should have done that anyway, as you can see from my next chapter and one of the bigger problems of the season. You wanna know how many characters there are in this season? I counted how many there are in the cast list on the Ninjago wiki. There are, drumroll please, 56 characters with speaking roles in this one season. Let me say it again, 56. For comparison, most Ninjago seasons have between 31 and 45 characters in one season. Anything below or above that is very rare. In fact, next to DR Season 2, there are only 6 seasons with more characters. Season 11 with 48 characters, Prime Empire with 49, Crystallized with 55, also way too many, Season 2 with 56, Dragons Rising Season 1 with 70, and Dragons Rising Season 3 with 73. But PJ, if this season has the least amount of characters of DR, does that not mean that seasons 1 and 3 should be even more overstuffed? Well, season 3 does so little with its characters that it somehow manages to be still a boring season despite them. For Dragons Rising Season 1, the reason there are so many characters is because there is a huge number of characters who only appear for an episode or two and then don't show up afterwards. And that is only natural. The world of the merged realms was just introduced, so of course the writers would spend time exploring different places, and as such many different characters, even when they only get a single episode appearance. Season 2 is a different story though. Instead of going through multiple different places and exploring a new one in each episode, we mostly spend time in the same location while following a multi-episode arc with few recurring characters. First in the introduction with the ninja, the Cloud Monks and the Wolf Clan, then in the training grounds with the ninja, Ron 2 and Egalt, then a multi-episode subplot with a whole bunch of people, then in the wilderness, and finally in the tournament with a whole lot of new characters. Those are 5 arcs, which means an average of 10.6 characters per arc. Sorry for all the math in this section. My point is, that is too much, especially considering that this season also tries to give most characters actual arcs. Arin is our focus character, but Sora also gets a mystery subplot. Lloyd gets a subplot about mental health. Ryo gets an arc about learning to fly. Kai and Nia get their own arcs. Cole has his own subplot. Wildfire has her own subplot, and even some side characters like Zur or Bornzel or Egalt get their own arcs. I do commend them for trying to develop all of these guys, but something to this extent could not work. Remember Dragons Rising Season 1? Yeah, the only characters from that season that had full-on character arcs were our core quartet, plus Kai and Wildfire as this season's rostered secondary ninja. Everyone else either got just mini arcs, like the side characters Percival and Ericor, or did not have an arc and only got a couple of defining character moments, especially pre-existing characters like Zane. In Season 2, since they are trying to make everyone equally important, it is just getting too much, especially in the tournament arc. Because everyone needs a battle, that means that we also need a new character for every round. The result though is chaos. In fact, a Blue Sky user named Monarp actually tried to make a table of all the rounds of the tournament. Here it is. See the problem? Most elemental masters are unknown. As a result, it is also unknown what their powers are or why said powers are never used by Noct during the final fight. Monarp tried fixing this problem by making the table look like this instead. However, this cannot be considered canon because, as you can see, the elemental masters of surface tension and propulsion needed to be moved to completely different sections. So A, Lloyd's battle with the Crackling and Beatrix's battle with Mrs. Bubbles did not happen, they were continuity errors, or B, this is canon, creating several plot holes. All this could have been avoided if a couple of elemental masters were cut from the final product. Right now though, all of them are there and every character is fighting with every other character for screen time. Let's go through some examples. I picked out 4 characters, 2 of which are more important in part 1, the others are more important in part 2. That way my video won't be as overstuffed as the season. Still, this might take a while, so buckle up. If I had to summarize Zane's role in this season in one sentence, it would be Zane is there. Of course though, it is a little bit more complicated than that.
Don't worry everyone, Ninja Zane will be here in case any emergencies arise.
When I first heard this I was like, man, please don't tell me Zane is just gonna stay back at the monastery for 2 seasons in a row. After all, Doc White had promised us that Zane would be getting more development in the future. Well, to our surprise, Cole and the Finders show up at the monastery and pull Zane on a side quest. I can imagine worse things than that. Of course, this is not really character development for Zane. The arc mostly revolves around Bornzel, with Cole and Zane just being themselves while they're there. However, that still works because I stand by the fact that Cole and Zane are a really underrated duo. Whenever these two share a subplot together, it is great. Whether it's inspecting the grave of the Constricti, the Noodle Factory breakout, the SOG infiltration, or this plot, whenever these two goofballs are sent on a mission together, hilarity ensues. However, I feel like it still lacks some Zane development. Or rather, they could have given him some, but first off, the side quest starts out with a filler episode, the only one of the season, to Mysterium. The entire plot only consists of the ninja train, Egalt gets hurt because Arin made a mistake. Meanwhile, Cole, Zane and Bonsall get tricked and captured by Jordana, a villain I liked in season 1 but is annoying now. We defeat him and he's out of the season, and now, only now, do they actually go to Mysterium, as the title suggests. The end. Don't get me wrong, this is not a terrible episode, it is like 7 out of 10. However, it does feel like Zane and Cole's plot is only starting to begin after this point, when we have already lost a pretty huge chunk of time. Once we actually get to Mysterium, it is the most underwhelming place in the whole season and the first Dragon's Rising setting with objectively bad world building. Name me one thing you know about this place other than that Candelaria lives here and that there is a monastery. Seriously, that is pretty much all we know about this realm. The main text on the Ninjago wiki page for Mysterium is only 2 sentences long and the rest does not really give us anything more to go by either. Except for a huge missed opportunity. On his Blue Sky account, Doc Wyatt has confirmed that Hazadur, the dark sorcerer whose living skull we see in season 13, actually originated from Mysterium. So one of Cole's biggest adversaries has a direct connection to the place. Don't you think that it would have been a cool character moment for Cole? Was this actually addressed? I am not asking for something big, just one short dialogue like, "All magic of the merged realms is somehow connected to this place. Light magic like that of my creator, and dark magic like that of the famous Hazadur." We have met Hazadur before. Let's hope we don't encounter anyone like him. I mean, guys, you brought up Cole's mother in part 2, so what's the problem in also bringing up the villain in one short sentence? Unless they never actually planned Hazadur to have a connection to Mysterium, and when asked, Doc Wyatt just made it up on the spot. If that's the case, then remember that, cause...
That's a surprise tool that can help us later.
Zane also has a missed opportunity for a character moment during this arc. However, his problem is more connected to the problem of too many characters, so let's talk about it in more detail. After finding Candelaria, the monastery of Mysterium is attacked by the administration. Wow, another villain that I liked but is starting to overstay their welcome after that episode. Awesome! The reason they're there is to obtain Zane, who is, according to them, just equipment destined to be incinerated. If you remember, Zane went through a character arc and crystallized. One that wasn't amazing or anything, but it was better than almost anything else in that season. And unlike in DR, he had something to do. His arc was about him first starting to deactivate his emotions to avoid grief, but then learning that grief is a part of humanity you must not give up. In DR Season 1, he sees everyone else only viewing him as a robot and nothing else, causing him to doubt whether he is even the same anymore. It would have made both of these arcs a lot better if he showed any reaction to being called equipment. However, there was no time for that because everyone else already needed a character moment in this episode, and we have already wasted time with the drama plot, which is a shame because after that, Zane is completely pushed to the side for the rest of the season. For example, during the climax of part 1, we get incredibly close to Zane and Cole having a moment, since they are trying to stop the Cloud Kingdom from crashing down. But it isn't Zane or Cole or even Candelaria who manages to save Cloud Kingdom, it's Euphrasia, a character with so little personality that it is kind of impressive. In other words, none of the people we've grown to love get this moment, it's this one girl we don't care about. This is Zane's entire role in part 1. He gets on a side quest that could have developed him further, but only uses him for comedy and a support for Bonsall's arc. As for part 2, he is not in the shape of motion because he was training to achieve Rising Dragon technique, but not Cole. He was not with Zane when Lloyd went back to the training grounds, but Cole was also not in the shape of motion and we know he did not get back to the Land of Lost Things, so where was Cole during all of this? Wait, this section was supposed to be about Zane. Don't worry, I will move on to the other characters very shortly. Just 2 things I want to add here. 1, Zane is the first to get kicked out of the tournament, which I was originally very angry about, but then we found out that the tournament was rigged, so I guess it's fine. Also, I like Zane's reaction to losing.
That was a noble battle that I unfortunately lost. Now I can only spectate until my powers return after the final game.
This shows exactly what we all love about Zane. He is a smart and reasonable one of a team who almost never loses his cool, which both parts of the season capture really well most of the time. Unfortunately, the stress in the sentence is on most, which is my second and final Zane related point. There are several moments in part 2 where Zane just kinda loses his intelligence, like here.
Remember, Not every master is an ally. Cinder could be here, or
Euphrasia!
yes, she might be here, but I am only listing enemies.
Not might be, she is here! Look!
Zane, you have Nindroid scanners. You should have seen Euphrasia way before Nia did. Stuff like that happens throughout Dragon's Rising. Zane's intelligence only appears when the writers need it for the plot to work, and when it disappears to make jokes at Zane's expense. But okay, those are all of my complaints with Zane in this season. Which is kind of a lot. Especially considering that he has a relatively minor role. Just like in every season since 2015, with seasons 8 and 11 as small exceptions. And now that Dragon's Rising Season 3 continued this trend despite marketing itself as a Zane season, I have lost all hope for the guy. Zane is just a plot device and nothing more. Dragon's Rising keeps getting praise for continuing the ninja story so well, but Zane has gotten the short end of the stick continuously, which is just really sad. I called Egalt a jerk earlier, because that is what he is. His kind of character is called a stern teacher. A teacher that is very harsh and strict, but also still fair to his students. Other examples of a stern teacher include Henry Henderson from Spy X Family and Minerva McGonagall from Harry Potter.
I will not have you in the course of a single evening besmirching that name by behaving like a babbling, bumbling band of baboons.
However, I feel like Egalt tends more towards mean than fair, which makes this entire arc very jarring to watch. But PJ, he gets a lot of development later. He warms up to the ninja and we find out why he's being so mean. He has a terminal illness. That is absolutely tragic. Getting a terminal illness is something absolutely horrible that I don't wish to happen to anyone. However, when I watched the episode for the first time, I did not even understand that it was terminal. Probably because this is the only scene where they focus on the sickness. We never really find out more about it. All we know is his scales turn black because of the sickness. This tragedy had lots of potential for exploring Egalt's character, but they forget about this plot point almost immediately. Because of this, I also did not care for his death in Season 3. Especially when I still have so many more questions about him and his past. Why were he and Ronto the ones being chosen to fight the Forbidden Five? Did they ever go on other adventures? Who are these other non-dragon students he mentioned, and what happened to them? What were he and Ronto doing the whole time before the ninja showed up? And most importantly, why does he look like Wu? When his design was first revealed, everyone was theorizing what that meant. One theory I really liked is that his dragon power is to steal someone's essence, and that he stole Wu's essence after the merge, which is why Wu is this yellow ghost thing now. But no, he just looks like Wu because... I don't know. And what's worse is that no one in the show acknowledges this. The reason Egalt is so underdeveloped is because once again, there are so many other characters in the season that they do not have time to make room for his development. My biggest problem with him though is that he represents a bigger problem with modern Ninjago.
You've clearly been taught well, but you have only scratched the surface of what you need to learn. Ronto is right. This world is doomed.
The world is doomed. How often have we heard that sentence in the last couple of years? The last Ninjago installment without something like this was The Island. Not a particularly good special, but it's watchable. Ever since then, every season felt the need to introduce a new world-ending threat, which would severely damage any franchise in the long run. After a while, the audience will start to ask, why should we be afraid of the world ending? Our heroes face something like that every day. I know this because this is what basically every Marvel fan in the world tells me. It is also why one of the things many Ninjago fans wanted from the new series is that it takes a step back and tries to be as charming as the classic seasons. While not every season was about the world ending.
Involved with the show, he'd create a season that minimized technology and more character focus. Honestly, I agree with this. Crystallize was a very ambitious season, and it kind of lost sight of what made Ninjago so special. Now it's time to scale things back.
But no, the return of the Forbidden Five must be an earth-shattering event, because we have forgotten how to build up tension in any other way. Oh, and also, it aged pretty terribly considering that in Dragon's Rising Season 3, the Forbidden Five are the least menacing and most incompetent villains Ninjago has ever seen. And it's not an exaggeration. And all of that gets even worse when you consider the other part of the statement. You have only scratched the surface of what you need to learn. No, they haven't. If he was only referring to our new generation of ninja, then yeah, maybe. But he's talking about the whole crew. I do not believe for a second that Kai, Lloyd or Nia have only scratched the surface of their potential. Like I said, they save the world pretty much every week. Also, wasn't Wu's entire arc during Hunted that he relearns all the lessons he taught the ninja, because at this point they've already passed his training? Also, if they've actually only scratched the surface of their potential, then tell me this: why do you guys only teach them one thing and then tell them, oh, there's nothing more we can teach you? When someone tells me that I've only scratched the surface of my potential, I usually don't believe that they mean I only need to learn one more thing and then I'm done. I guess what I'm trying to say is, it is too late for a plotline like this. But PJ! How often are you gonna keep appearing like this? Until one of the two of us dies! Okay, then you should consider yourself lucky that I am a pacifist. What do you want? But PJ! Perhaps there's a lot more to Rising Dragon technique than you think. Perhaps it is a technique that takes so much training and knowledge into account that it is actually a huge field to learn, making the statement justified. That is a reasonable explanation. One problem though. Which problem? We do not see any of this in the show, and there is a reason for this. They did not have enough time for it because of all the other characters. Speaking of which, time to move on. We discussed 2 ninja and 1 mentor. So now we should get to some of the villains. There's one problem with that though, so bear with me shortly. We have our main villain, Raz, and his 2 students as secondary villains. 3 if you count Jay. But he also gets help from Forbidden 5, Blacked and his master. So our main villain faction consists of 11 major villains. Add to that all the minor threats such as Dorama, the stupid agents, and Fedulian and Zeatrix, and we have 16 villains in one season. I can't discuss 16 villains in one section of a video. Too many characters, like I keep saying. So because of this, I decided to pick out one villain I have especially much to talk about. It is... wait, who is this? I have never seen this woman before. But PJ, you know her! But guy, do you know that this is the entire joke around her character, that nobody knows her? I do know the joke, but I hate it. That is my point. Oh, I get it. Sorry about that. In the first half, Jordana is legit amazing. Her arc of going from a small, unknown science lackey in Season 1 to the second in command of the Wolf Clan in Season 2 is scary yet also very satisfying to see. She relishes in enslaving the Cloud Kingdom and gets more and more powerful with each episode, while also slipping insanity through said power, without showing any mercy whatsoever. Jordana in Season 2 Part 1 is an absolute menace to society, and the whole time I was just waiting for her to go even further. Not necessarily take over as main bad guy, but I thought it would be fitting for her to go from one extreme to the other. In Season 1 she was a nobody that nobody paid attention to, especially not her arch nemesis. In Season 2, Sora would start to recognize what a huge threat Jordana really was the whole time, because of how much the hatred inside Jordana shadows her goodness, without any Gong involved. Just her going into a downward spiral of evilness. And I was not the only one. Ninjago cast also said something similar during their reaction series to Season 2 Part 1.
Yeah, I want to see her and Sora get a cool fight at some point.
Hopefully, yeah.
She has to become a true, arch rival.
Yeah, it's I want to see the moment where Sora's like, oh wait, actually I should take you serious.
When I saw this final shot of Jordana swinging back and forth with a Joker grin on her face, I was excited. What was gonna happen in Part 2? After watching Part 2, I have to say, I'm not mad about her role, just disappointed. As it turns out, her supposed insanity at the end was not actually her, but one of the Forbidden 5, Rox, possessing her. Now, why does this bother me? Well, first of all, this leads to one of the many mysteries in this season. And yes, at first, the mystery seems really interesting, with Jordana acting all strange around Sora, who then becomes the main investigator in the plotline. However, we cannot really focus on this mystery since, like I said, there is so much other stuff going on in here that each plotline suffers from the already pretty weak pacing of the season. This leads to this particular mystery not having enough room to breathe. We barely get any red herrings and only a handful of clues for what might be going on with her. In fact, the crew must have realized that they did not have enough time to put in many clues, so they tried to make each clue as memorable as possible so that the audience won't forget this particular mystery exists. As a result, however, the clues ended up being so blatantly obvious that I got the mystery solved several episodes before the reveal. part, the mystery is set up, Sora confronts Jordana and gets no satisfying results. Later, in the same episode mind you, we see that one of the Forbidden Four in the Neverspace is asleep. And then Noct calls Jordana 2 episodes later. Noct is thousands of years old. There is no way that he is the brother of a teenager. So if you remember the sleeping member of the Neverspace and remember that crazy look on Jordana's face, you've got it already figured out. But even if you forgot one of those details or just didn't count 2 and 2 together in this moment, you should have figured it out during that one flashback from the final game at the latest, since Rox directly calls Noct her brother during this flashback. So, if his sister is one of the Forbidden Five, why does he call Jordana his sister? And why does Jordana call him brother? So yeah, they just spoiled their own reveal. Awesome. I could maybe accept it if this was an internal reveal, meaning we, the audience, knew what was going on the whole time, and it was only the characters who needed to catch up, but that's not how it's being presented. We are actually supposed to be surprised once it becomes clear what is happening. So this mystery surrounding Jordana is actually a really bad mystery. Now let's talk about her relationship with Sora. No, not a relationship in that way. I meant whatever. The point is, Sora's arc surrounding Jordana is that she starts to empathize with her and realize that she treated her badly. So she apologizes to her.
I want to tell you, I'm sorry. I didn't remember you from when we were in school together. I made you feel unimportant. I wish I hadn't been so wrapped up in my own stuff. School was a really lonely time in my life, and I could have used a friend. Maybe we both could have?
Sora, sorry to disappoint you, but that was not the reason Jordana hates you so much. The reason was because she was jealous of all the attention you got during your school life. You not remembering her was just the cherry on top, not the ice cream itself. If you want to remove the problem she has with you, you should get rid of all the ice cream, not just the decoration. Sorry about that. My point still stands though. Sora, you did absolutely nothing wrong in this scenario. You never bragged about your accomplishments, you never insulted her, and you forgetting about her had nothing to do with her turning evil. It's her envy and her insanity that are at fault here. She should apologize to you, not the other way around. So this is not only inconsistent with Jordana's backstory, but also sends a pretty bad message. I can accept this if this does not end up being the ultimate resolution to the conflict, but instead maybe the beginning of an arc. Also, sorry to disappoint all Jordana shippers, but it would be a horrendous idea to make them a couple. This is an extremely toxic start for a relationship. I'm getting flashbacks to Lorumi, even if it's not quite as bad yet. Though this development does destroy Jordana's whole character. Like I said, she was being set up to be the next big threat who gets more evil in each episode. This development, however, flips it completely on its head. After the finale, Rox has her old body back and Jordana is free. One question: why would she want to keep doing evil after this? The answer is, she would not. Because of her master's actions, she completely lost control of her mind and body for several months, and she herself says,
While Rox puppeted my body, I was trapped inside her mind. I've seen her thoughts, her evil plans. You've got to stop her!
That completely confirms my fears. Jordana will most likely get a redemption arc, because after something as traumatizing as this, there is literally no reason for her to still be on Raz's side or against the ninja. I usually love redemption arcs, but this was just the wrong direction for her. The literal point of her arc in part 1 was that she was getting more and more evil with every episode, and now she suddenly does a complete 180 and goes into the opposite direction. With a justified reason, yes, but can't you see how inconsistent the writing around her is? A well-timed redemption arc would have been one where she ends up going completely evil, does something completely evil, which finally gives us a payoff to Sora not taking her seriously for so long, but then, after doing that horrible thing, she realizes her mistake and tries to redeem herself. Now we just got the setup for one direction, only for the show to be like, time to subvert some expectations, and instead take her character into the opposite direction. Jordana becoming Sora's actual arch-nemesis could have made for a really great villain-hero dynamic. She could have been the next mechanic, going from a joke villain to a genuine threat over time. Now, doing so wouldn't make sense anymore. Or would it? I don't know. Let's just move on. As I said, Arin is awesome in this season. However, he does suffer from some of that too many characters syndrome too. Like Jordana, his problems start to begin in part 2, while in part 1, his confidence crumbling down more and more is shown very well. Even if I don't like a lot of what is happening around that arc. You can feel that desperation he has growing stronger and stronger, especially when he hallucinates his parents. Generally, I like the way that his parents are implemented. We find out more about them, and that makes us feel bad for Arin all the more. We also understand why the object spinjitzu is so important to him. He feels like the weak link of the team, so being a huge part in helping to defeat Raz obviously helps, only to be then thrown in his face when he finds out that it was a lie. Just one small critique. In part 1, Wildfire is shown to also know that Sora lied to Arin, but that never comes back in part 2. It is not used to make Sora and Wildfire bond over shared knowledge, nor does Arin get mad at Wildfire for being in the know but not telling him. However, I can overlook that. What I cannot overlook is that Arin's arc is dependent on his investigation, and that investigation might actually be the dumbest part of the entire season.
You're looking at the elemental master of Quake!
Okay, I take it back, nothing is going to top this in terms of being dumb. Now, why do I call the investigation dumb? You see, Arin keeps calling his parents experts at solving mysteries, and we are shown that they taught him a lot about said topic. Despite this, Arin does the investigation completely wrong. He has a chance to take a look at all the possible suspects during the feast. Does he use this opportunity to talk to anyone? Nope. Instead, we then get introduced to another mystery in Who Sent the Killer Robots, which now becomes his main case. For one scene, that is. Arin and Ryu find the place where the killer robots were sent from, find this weird symbol, he copies it, and that was the entire investigation of the episode. Not that I blame him. There are so many other plotlines and characters we need to focus on, of course he can't do anything more than that in a single episode. Only in United We Fall, the best episode of the season, Arin gets sent to investigate Raz's living quarters, which ends up just as him being manipulated by Raz, so the investigation stops very quickly. But for understandable reasons. Arin did not find anything that seemed important, and Raz shattered his entire worldview, so I get that he would have something else on his mind. My problem comes with what happens afterwards. At the beginning of the Sword Shatters, he makes a meeting where he talks about his suspicions to the ninja. Why did you not do this earlier? That is like the first thing you do when making an investigation. Now, the goal of this scene is to show that so far the ninja were biased in this case, since they just assumed that Raz was behind the death of the matriarch and did not take a look at the other possible suspects. So basically the moral is that now they remove that bias and the actual investigations start. Now! With less than 4 episodes left in the season. Of course I understand why they did that. Say it with me. We needed more room for all the other plotlines, so the investigation suffers. We have so little time for the rest of it that Roby becomes the new main red herring, yet the show does not have enough time to convince us that he might be behind the attack on the ninja, so the entire rest of clues and suspects is just rushing to make Black the new main suspect in a rather unnatural way. The reason they drop the suspicion on Roby is because Roby tells them that he got his cufflinks before the first tournament game, meaning he did not know the symbol during the time of the attack, meaning he was not behind the attack. How do you know that Roby is telling the truth here? We have no other source that backs up the statement, so who cares? My point is that Arin's arc is great, but the plotline it's attached to isn't. Which is a shame, because I love mysteries, especially murder mysteries, so seeing one in Ninjago should be my dream come true. But it is too badly written to work. If I am ever in the mood for a tournament arc with a mystery plotline attached to it, I'll just reread Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire instead. So to finally end this section, I will just say how I would have improved on this point. Obviously, the solution is to cut out some of the characters and plot points. Here are the ones I would have removed. Cinder's character, some of the new Elemental Masters, mostly Zera and Obscuria, the Dorama episode, most of Enter the City of Temples, Jordana's possession, and Zantan's being framed.
But PJ, if both the mystery of Jordana and the mystery of Who Sent the Killer Robots are removed, then the story of part 2 no longer works.
Well, it already doesn't work the way it is, as I have just proven, but you have a point, so I will elaborate. The main thing Jordana's possession adds to the story is that Noct and Rox can kill these arc dragons to start the season's main mystery. In this possible rewrite by me, this mystery is removed along with Jordana's possession. Now you don't need to change that much, just have the ninja find out about the tournament and Raz's involvement with it through some other way and make it so that Noct's plan happens during the tournament, not before it. As for Zantan's, I removed him because of all the problems with him I listed in the Inconsistencies section. But instead of removing that plotline entirely, we can just take someone else as the person being framed. Personally, I would choose Tox, because 1. She already is an established elemental master. Unlike Zantan's, she actually was on good terms with the ninja, so then believing her actually makes sense. She has a direct connection to poison, so the red herring can stay, and it would actually give one of the OG elemental masters something to do other than just being here for nostalgia bait. Looking at you, Nero. So yeah, it would have been very easy to make this season work without putting 536 plotlines into it. Wow, this is not how I planned this. The video took way longer than I expected, which is why I decided to split it into 2 parts like this. I usually hate it when YouTubers split their videos into 2 parts because most of the time they just do it to double the views. This time, however, I have no choice because if I don't split it, the video will take another year. But now, for a semi-conclusion, okay, I guess the official term is interim conclusion, I can say that what I said at the beginning no longer holds up. I don't love this season, but I still like it. The score is amazing as always, the animation is easily the best of the franchise, Arin and Raz still have really strong stories in this one, and there's a lot of fun to be had, especially during part 2. Yet there are even more problems I have yet to talk about. So far, my video has been tackling the question, is the season as good as everyone says? The obvious answer being no. So the second video will tackle the follow-up question, is it as good as I remember? To do that, I will talk about how Dragon's Rising Season 3 and 4 handled the plotlines in this season. In the meantime, I've got a special analysis video in the works, and there's way more where that came from, so if you are interested in Ninjago and or some other franchises I referenced during the duration of this video, then maybe consider sticking around for the future of this channel. But even if you don't, I still thank you for watching. I am PJ, and this was my review. Farewell.